Today is all about asynchronous JavaScript, and mostly in the beginner sense of it. We're going to be using two built-in functions called setTimeout and setInterval, which allow us to run code either at an interval, meaning every second it'll run the same code over and over again until we clear it, or let it run forever. And then the other one, setTimeout, will run code after a certain amount of time has passed once and then not run again. So, to get into this, we can start by setting a timeout by literally doing setTimeout. It's a built-in function, so we don't have to access an object or anything. Parentheses, now the first parameter is a callback function. If you don't understand that or anonymous functions, I urge you to watch the function video I posted. It'll clear all that up for you and kind of help set the mood for this a little more. So I'm going to start with an anonymous arrow function just like this. And inside of the body is what I want it to run after the time is up. So once the time is up, it's going to run this. So I'm going to do console.log. Hello. Real simple. And in between, it takes a second parameter. So in between the last curly brace and the last parenthesis, I'm going to do a comma. And this is how many milliseconds I want to wait until the body runs. In this case, I'm going to do 2, so 2000. Once I run this, you're going to see it load down here, but it won't actually output hello until 2 seconds have passed. There it goes, and hello. And to further push that, I'm going to console.log there. Now, some would think that we're going to wait 2 seconds, run hello, and then it'll say there. But in reality, it does the opposite. Asynchronous functions are ran when they're ran, meaning that the rest of the code will run as normal, regardless of this if this is ran or not. So if we run it, we actually get there, 2 seconds, hello. So the lesson to take from that is that if you create an asynchronous function that doesn't have particular keywords to await the function's return, which we'll get into in the next video, you may have code running out of the order that you expect. If you're trying to create a delay function to delay the code from executing, we will cover that in the next video. In this video, I just want to explain these built-in functions and how they can be used. So, to recap, setTimeout, anonymous function is the first parameter, that's this. Inside of the body of the anonymous function is what we're going to run, comma, the second parameter is how many seconds or milliseconds that we wait in order for the function body to run. 2 seconds pass, console.log is run. Down here, it's going to keep running code regardless of if this timer is up or not. So, with that said, let's go ahead and continue into setInterval. So setInterval, very similar to setTimeout. If you type set in, chances are it'll be on the top of the autocomplete, so it's not hard to remember. Just remember set. Same idea, anonymous function, same exact thing. So inside, I'm going to do hello again. And once again, second parameter, I'm going to wait every second. So every 1,000 milliseconds. And let's see what happens. So every single second, we should see hello, 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 hello. And now this will go forever. If I sit here and leave, it's going to keep doing this forever. So let's talk about clear interval, which will allow us to stop. Now, in order to make this stop, if you've started this and you're outputting the code into this terminal or the debug console, whatever you're in, just hit Control-C. It'll boot you out, or I believe there's another way to stop it. I think if you're in the browser, you just close the browser. Anyway, let's talk about clear interval. In order to clear an interval, you have to name setInterval. So if I say const, which is a constant, I'm going to just call it hello, equals. Now we've assigned setInterval to hello. Hello holds this interval. So down here, if I set a timeout, I'm going to grab this timeout and then just uncomment it. What I'm going to do is after 5 seconds, I'm going to clear interval. Okay? You can also clear timeout if that's something you want to do to cancel a timeout. Same idea. Inside of the parentheses, you name the variable that is assigned to the timeout you would like to stop. So in this case, hello. And that's it. What this is going to do is, I believe this will run for 5 iterations of hello, and then we should see it stop. So I'm going to run the code. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh no, it did it for 4. So take that into account. So if I want this to run for 5 iterations, you want to go above it. Or maybe you might not even need to do above it. You could probably just do 100 milliseconds. Let's try that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It did 5. If you want to be able to run this for a particular amount of iterations, make sure you accommodate that here. Just do a little over the time you expect. I would say 250 milliseconds just in case you have other stuff going on. But that's essentially how you would clear. And you would use both of these to the advantage. So right here, we are declaring a variable called hello. We're assigning it to an interval. That interval takes an anonymous function. Inside of the body is what we want to run. The second parameter is every second. Every 1,000 is a second. It's in milliseconds. So we're going to run console.log 5 times, and then 100 milliseconds later, we're going to clear hello and remove that interval entirely. So I hope that's kind of cleared up a little bit about how this works. I'm going to quickly show you a nice, neat little project that I'm going to post inside of the Tips and Tricks channel in case you guys want to mess with it. In the HTML, nothing too crazy. I have a counter and an H1. I have a div separating these 3 buttons. We have a start timer, a stop timer button, and a clear timer button. That's reflected here, and I have it a little bit of flexbox and styles. This is really it. I'm just making it a flexbox so it's in this particular design, so it's not too interesting. But so over here is where all the fun is happening. I tried to label these to make it make sense. Now I'm using some advanced ideas of how to grab stuff, and you can take from this what you will. Up here, I'm grabbing the elements, and the way I did it may seem very convoluted. I just didn't want to cloud this up with unnecessary code. All the important stuff is really right here. So we have 2 global variables. We have I, which is the counter itself. We have the counter, which is the interval that we're setting. Right now it's set to null because I wanted to initiate it as a global variable. In here, we have the counter function, which takes one parameter called isOn, which normally when you declare a Boolean, you start with is. Inside the body, we have an if statement and an else statement. It's saying if is on, which means if is on is true. Then assign counter, which we did up here, to a set interval. And what I'm doing is right here, this is the, what I did is I grabbed all of the elements and put them in an array. And the first array index is the counter up here. So you can see 0, 1, 2, and 3. So that if that explains how I did this here. And we're saying the counter inner text is equal to I. I is currently 1. It hasn't started yet, so it's 0. Here we're going to increment I, and then every 100 milliseconds, we're going to keep doing this. It's an interval, so we're going to say inner text is I, increase I. Inner text is I, increase I. Else clear the interval, clear counter. Okay? So if isOn is false, then it will clear the interval instead. So down here, we're grabbing the start timer button. 1 is 1, so that's right here. We're adding an event listener. We're calling the click event, and then we're grabbing an anonymous function of what we want to do when we click it. We're saying I want to access counterfunc, and I'm sending in true, meaning we're going to start the interval. Okay? And then down here we have stop timer. If I click stop timer, then it's the same idea, click event, anonymous function. Then we're sending in false, saying I want to clear the timer. Therefore, it's gone. It's not running anymore. It's not cleared, but it stopped it, starting and stopping it. So by that knowledge, if I clear it, okay, the header will always be equal to I. So that hasn't changed. So if I start it again, it reassigns counter to set interval and will just continue to increment the number every 100 milliseconds. Down here, we have clear timer. 3 is 3. Okay, right here. Clear button. And down here, we're also sending in false, saying clear the interval, but we're also assigning I to 0 and the counter to 0, meaning we completely stop and turn it to 0. So if I demonstrate it over here, start timer every 100 milliseconds, which means 10 times a second, it's going to increment this number. There it goes. If I hit stop, it stops. Starting it, it continues. Stop it, it stops. Clear, it removes it. Stopping it doesn't do anything if it isn't started because there's nothing to clear. Starting it will continue it. If I clear it, it'll stop it and clear it. I hope this little project kind of helps you get an idea of how a basic counter works. This part up here I wouldn't worry too much about. It's really here and this stuff about how to like add buttons and how to add an event. You can probably play with this anything you want. You know, change the milliseconds. If you want to make it a proper timer, you just make it to 1,000. And now it'll go every second. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can clear it. Same idea.